Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 3 of the Monday Q&A, so let's do it. First question. Will a lifter reach his genetic potential eventually, regardless of programming? Will it just happen more quickly for one who follows intelligent programming? You know, I don't like to think of it as genetic limits. I would think of it as massively diminished returns the more advanced you get. And those diminished returns happen over time. So the more advanced you get, the more diminished your returns will be continually. And obviously they won't be as diminished if you haven't reached a goal as quickly because your training sucked. But you don't really have those limits. And I know people say, well, why do you talk about those fat-free mass index limits? Because quite frankly, someone who's doesn't have amazing genetics might need 30 years to reach the 25 fat-free mass index. They might hit 24, that 24 in 5 or 6 years, and to go from 24 up to the 25 lean fat-free mass index, they might need to train for another 15 or 20 years to reach it. But they're still making yearly progress, even if that yearly progress is a couple of ounces of muscle per year. They haven't stopped making progress. If they're adding 5 pounds to their bench press every year, and they're gaining 2 ounces of muscle per year, you haven't reached your potential. You're still progressing, and you might do that for decades. But you are talking about that point to where your returns are so diminished that they're almost non-existent. I would say no, they may not reach it even on bad programming. What you will find with bad programming is that you will stall more often. And yeah, they might progress later, but what you'll see with someone who's an advanced lifter, whether it's recreational lifter, bodybuilder, power lifter, whatever, if their programming isn't good, which you'll see when they see those diminished points, is that they'll get 5 and 6 month blocks to where they don't change at all. Nothing improves. They don't make any progress whatsoever due to poor programming and poor training styles. And then they'll change something, adjust something. Then they'll start making progress again for 6 months, and they'll stall again. And for another 6 months, they'll make no progress. Just like you guys see guys at the gym all the time who've been training 3 or 4 years. Or 5 years or more, and you come in and watch them train, and if you've been at that same gym a while, sometimes you'll see a year or two that person literally looks the exact same, their strength is the same, they're still doing half squats with 220 pounds for 2 years straight. They're still not getting dramatically bigger or stronger, even though they are at a low level of development oftentimes. Particularly, oftentimes you'll see it with their lower body will be at a low level of development, and maybe their upper body will be okay. But you'll see the guys like that, and they don't really make progress. So the question would become, obviously they're nowhere near their genetic potential. Oftentimes they aren't even out of their full noob gains. They have a physique and a strength level that could be obtained with 1 year of training after 3 or 5 years of training, and they're not making any progress due to poor programming. In that case, really, really bad programming. So you'll see this from time to time. So no, there's no guarantee that you're going to reach anywhere near your potential on bad programming, even if you do it for a decade. All right, next question. Will a person who train heavy compound movements like squats and deadlifts have a better likelihood of surviving things like car, airplane crash, or huge falls? Statistically speaking, yes, they will, but it's not so much that you could obviously depend on it. Just because you're big and jacked doesn't mean I'd go run out in front of a car. But this is true for a number of reasons. It has to do with support musculature, giving extra padding over organs, extra padding over things like your spine. Higher bone density is the big one. People who train can have dramatically, particularly people who lift really heavy, can have dramatically higher levels of bone density than other people. And if bones are twice as difficult to break, if you take a large impact that's going to break bones, and those broken bones are going to puncture through organs and things, that's generally what you have happen. Even with bullet wounds, oftentimes that's what you're seeing is a bullet hitting bone and shattering that bone and chunks of that bone going through organs and stuff. So it may not save your life necessarily, because these are traumatic things that could kill anybody, no matter how tough you are. But that higher bone density, extra muscle padding can absolutely give you better odds of surviving in one of these situations. You might not ever be the same afterwards, but at least you might have just a slightly higher chance of surviving. So yeah, it is there. But obviously it's not something you'd want to gamble with. All right, next question. What is the level of risk of tearing the bicep using mixed grip on deadlifts, and is it appreciable enough to switch to a different grip? This is hard to answer because there's a lot of factors involved. There are drug factors involved, technique factors involved, joint angle specificity training involved. High on the list is going to be just bad technique. If you deadlift without locking your elbows, you're at a much, much higher chance. If your elbows are locked, the chance is dramatically reduced of this happening. If you're not on hefty amounts of anabolic drugs, particularly when you're on stacks that do nothing for connective tissue, you have a higher chance of tearing a bicep. And I would say the things that you could do to reduce the chance of most are obviously technique related. Learning to lock the elbows. Learning to pull smoothly from the floor without jerking, starting with your elbows bent. Obviously you want it to be as fast and explosive as possible, but not at the point to where you're bending the elbows and then jerking. The other thing that you could do is full range of motion bicep movements. If you're doing your chin-ups, do your chin-ups from a dead hang, full extension. When you do barbell curls or dumbbell curls, extend all the way down to the bottom, even doing like the incline curls you guys have seen me do. Full range of motion bicep lifts to where you are training the bicep to be stronger and nice and flexible at the very bottom of the range of motion. In some cases may also reduce your chance of having a bicep rupture. Now, is it going to dramatically reduce it just doing those curls? No. But it's going to reduce it enough that it might make a difference. So those are the things that you need to look at. And when all those factors are in place, people don't do tons of partial bicep work and they do full range of motion. Their technique is good. They're not running tons of dry compounds in their drug stack, things like that. The chances of tearing a bicep are relatively low. They're very much at the acceptable levels, because you can get hurt doing anything. You can get hurt walking to the gym, riding your bike, driving your car to the gym, just as easily as you could get hurt lifting weights. Everything you do in life carries a risk. Even staying in your house and never leaving it, a meteor or an airplane could crash on your house. So the thing is just about minimizing risk. And in that case, if you take those appropriate steps, I would say you're at a very acceptable low level of risk there. Alright guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 4.